Lucky you!
Best 36 holes in golf.
You tuned in to Alternate Shots Podcast,
Marnie's Army.
where we talk about golf,
Marquis, Sandy's,
poker,
Bond, James Bond.
horse racing,
I'm all in.
great movies.
Alfred Hitchcock.
We have no script.
And down the stretch they come.
We're glad you joined us.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Whoop, let's start again. All right, Billy, we are back, and I believe we are at the front end 5-6 days away from the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby. How about them apples?
The most exciting 2 minutes in sports. They run 1.25 miles. None of them have ever done that before. They're all new 3-year-olds, so they're all young. As everybody that if you're not familiar with horse racing, this is for 3-year-old horses only, male or female, although it's almost always males. There are very few females that run in this race, although Genuine Risk and Regret, both females won it in their time, which was awesome. But this field this year has 20 horses. So regardless, and they're all qualified, there's no real huge standouts. Fierceness will probably be the favorite, maybe Sierra Leone, who's a stretch runner. But with 20 horses, it's a stampede to that first turn. There's about 1/4 mile till the first turn. So the expression jockeying for position is exactly accurate in this situation every year at the Kentucky Derby. It's very tough on the inside. Dornoch, who should be one of the favorites, third, fourth favorite, and by the way, is a full brother to Mage, who won last year. Ooh. At the same sire and dam, has speed, and he's going to have to flee the rail to get out of there. Otherwise, they're all going to come in on him. And, this is all about the trip and inexperienced horses, but experienced jockeys. So I'm not going to even attempt to make a pick here out of these 20 horses. I could tell you something about all of them, but
before we get into
none of it.
Let's explore that crowdedness. So the 20 horses is there's no top race like this ever. So the first 1/4 mile, it's like getting through Grand Central at 5:30 to your train. It's all packed in. Or our favorite movie, Let It Ride. It's like when they bring him down to the rail and the big guy moves everybody out of the way. Everybody out of the way is like Dornoch on the rail, because Dornoch's what, in a first 2 spots, 3 spots?
First, he's the number one.
All right, so everybody's 20 horses, they'll be coming out of there and they'll be trying to do this, right?
Yeah, the outside horses are going to try and get inside. That's going to force everybody. Fierceness, who's got a lot of speed, is in the 17 hole. So a 17 post position has never won the Derby. That's neither here nor there. But Fierceness has enough speed, but he can also control his speed. And with most of the early speed in the race to his inside, he'll be able to watch what goes on and make a decision, and probably be able to avoid a traffic jam because he's fast enough to get out, and he's outside, so he won't be squeezed, and there's not anybody faster outside him. So he might have a tactical advantage actually from being that far outside. But again, as I read somewhere recently, it's always true that he might be the best horse, but the best horse doesn't always win the Kentucky Derby.
So in the 17th position, which is like being in West Islip from Kentucky Derby all the way to the right, is he more inclined to run straight, if you will, around the track, or more in line to kind of curve in the first 1/4 mile? How would the trainer instruct this very fast favorite to take on that first 1/4 mile?
Well, he would probably tell him, we'll have to decide. These guys have to think on their feet, or on their back, on the horse's back. Um, but he has enough speed that if he decides to go, he'll try to get. He's not going to stay wide the whole time. The question will be when he comes in towards the inside to save ground, will he be doing that on the lead, or will he be dropping in behind some of the other speed? And there's a lot of speed horses in this race. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10. There's possibly 11 of the 20 horses that will head for the lead, one way or the other. Some of them are rank outsiders, so they'll probably fire just to because they have no other choice or no other chance. But it's going to be interesting because some of the stretch runners, like Sierra Leone, might be the favorite among the closers in the race. He's in the 2-hole. Now, that would stink if he was a speed horse, but he's probably just going to sit back and let everything happen in front of him and then try and sweep them on the far turn and come down the stretch, which he's done before. And he's very, very possible. And when it comes to betting the race, he will certainly be among the ones I'm looking closely at. In this race, I looked at a lot of these horses, and they're all young, and there's 3 or 4 races under their belts. Brad Cox has 3 horses in here.
Huh.
One of them, named Catching Freedom, is a stretch runner. The other 2 can run in speed, and that's what I expect will happen. I think Cox will have those 2 horses run out and try and burn out all the speed in front of him, including fierceness, and he'll try to pick up the peaches. So there's a good chance Catching Freedom.
Who's the best of the Cox horses, do you think?
See, all 3 of them are young, and all 3 of them have not been worse than, I think, second in their career. There might be 1 or 2 exceptions to that, but they're all 3 have shown quality. But I think Catching Freedom is the most logical of the Cox horses. I think he's got Giroux on him.
So how many horses did Baffert have in this race?
None.
How come?
Baffert's not allowed to run in Kentucky. He's been banned. I don't know how long that lasts because Medina Spirit was disqualified for drugs after winning the Derby. There's been a lot of blotches on the Kentucky Derby and the Triple Crown the last 5 years. What in sports might be termed asterisks. One time COVID affected the dates. One year there was a disqualification. One year there was a late disqualification. Another year, so this year there'll be another asterisk. The Belmont Stakes will not be at Belmont, and it will not be a 1.5 miles. It'll be in Saratoga at 1.25 miles. They'll call it the Belmont Stakes, and it'll count towards the Triple Crown, but it's not. To aficionados and traditionalists, there'll always be an asterisk there, because it's 1.25 miles.
Like the Open in Wingfoot in 2020, held in September. The golf course is nothing like in September, like it is in
right. And it counts as an open victory, but you can't leave out the fact that you always include, but it was in September. To me, I'm a little skeptical about almost all sports at this point. The PGA Tour is now going to hand out annuities to people. What's going on? You listen to sports radio and it's all about the money. It's all business, all money, all business, all money. Growing up, I feel bad for kids these days who don't have the same experience. I was lucky enough to, follow Mickey Mantle and the Yankees, and Mickey Mantle stayed on the Yankees his whole career. But one of the only sports that has survived this, and it's starting to drift a little bit, is horse racing. 150 years of the Kentucky Derby, and it still means the same thing to everybody who enters it, and it's still the same thrill to all horse racing fans. So, yeah, my hat's off to horse racing at this point. I hope they don't find a way to, detract from the sport based on money and commercialism, but it's very difficult to keep that out of sports.
May 17th, 1875 was the first Kentucky Derby run.
1875.
Yeah. And so they say this is the 150th running, which makes sense. So they never had a break with the war years, unlike golf and maybe other sports. Ben Hogan would have won his 10th major when a year that they didn't have the U.S. Open, but they played the event just like a U.S. Open. Say he had that other Open. Well,
Ted Williams would have been even better if it's possible, but if he hadn't missed a few years during his career for the war. So, yeah.
A little background. We'll get back to the race in a minute. There's so many pieces in this picture in our background. Talk about some of these things. You got the guy who calls the race up in the top with a, what is that, a bugle or some sort of a.
Well, they when the horses come out to the track, they do da 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 da. That guy is always, he probably feels on Derby Day the way whoever's singing the national anthem feels at the Super Bowl. Everybody's eyes are going to be on him. He'll try and do it add a little personal touch to the call to the riders up. Somebody will get to call riders up. That'll be a big thing for them. So the pomp and circumstances is great for the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah.
And if you're watching it on TV, you're going to see all kinds of hats. They all wear their big
These
fancy hats.
Look at the hats here. Look at these beautiful hats. These are not out of the picture. You might see them on Saturday. These hats.
Oh, you will see them. You will see them. They'll be all. If you watch the broadcast, you're going to see a lot of dressed up people. You'll see even men will be wearing weird jackets, colorful stuff. It's a spectacle, and it's all from happiness. Everybody's going to be in a great until they're ripping up their tickets after the race. But until then, they're all like, let's go, and they make themselves part of the spectacle by dressing up like that and by making it important to them. And that I think is a very, very key part of the Kentucky Derby or any great big sporting event. But I don't think anything tops this. This is because the Super Bowl or the World Series, you have fans and they can bet them and stuff like that. But this is a much more interactive sport, horse racing. It's you're as involved in the race with your bet as everybody else, as the jockeys, horses, and trainers and owners. You can insert yourself into that. You can't really do that with the others. You can always have a bet. I get that, but this is a different thing. You're handicapping. You have your favorites. The sires. There's all sorts of things that come into this that allow the spectator to actually be an active participant in the event.
Sure, they get to see the horses before they race, right?
Oh, absolutely. They'll be jockeying for position down there to get a good look at them saddling up. There's, some people have a great eye. Some people think they have a great eye. This horse looks like he's sweating. I'm not betting him. Years ago, I was at Saratoga, and there was a horse named Pete Moss who was great at running long distances. And I usually bet him at long distances, but I watched him in the paddock, and he was ornery and sweating, and he just looked horrible. So I didn't bet him, and he won. And then I came to find out he was always like that. So had I seen him in the past, it wouldn't have affected me. But here I thought I was onto something. This horse just can't win. Right?
Yes, it's like some of these athletes. I mean, you can even see these golfers. They're sweating when they put their arms up. They've been sweating.
Yeah, you could tell if they're dragging.
Yeah.
But if that's their normal thing, and you can only tell that, the professionals who are in the paddock all the time, and nobody can see all the horses all the time. It's impossible. But, the ones that work at the track and broadcast from the track who get to see these horses day in and day out might recognize a different, something different going on with the horse that can affect them either positively or negatively. They gained weight. They didn't gain weight. They're, hard to saddle. There's something wrong. They're, you can't know. The further out you are, you have to rely on information that you're really only speculating. The trainer might know something, and you might think what the trainer knows, and sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So the intricacies of figuring out what's what, and then the actual real life events that can happen to any living creature. The horse could have a bellyache. You won't know that. So, you have to operate on what information is available to you, and that's what makes it fun. It's all basically a crapshoot in the long run. You can have a very educated guess and win, or you can have an educated guess and lose because the jockey fell off the horse or there was a problem with the bridle. There's so many variables can happen, which is what makes this an amazing race with 20 horses. Everything has to go right for the winner.
Yeah,
there's no exception to that. Back in the day when you had Seattle Slew or Affirmed, they had enough speed to clear the field wherever they were and control the speed. Secretariat could run from anywhere. And some of the great horses like that arrogate. They can do that, but
Just
they
like
all can't do
just
that.
like Bobby Jones and Hogan and Nicklaus in their day, and now in the days of golf, there's no speed golfer anymore. You know, just as soon as you think John Rahm's the top, Scotty Scheffler comes in, Rory McIlroy,
Right.
Tiger Woods. So let's go. You and your wife are going to the Derby. You're packing up. You're flying out today. What's in store for you in Kentucky for this week? And let's just say your wife does like to put a $2 bet on there. But what are you doing to maximize your fun while you're down in Kentucky? Obviously, you've already got your outfit picked out. That's been done weeks and months ago. You've got your fuchsia colored tux with your yellow tie because you want to look like one of the rappers. And Alice has got this outfit there on the bottom with the red burgundy hat. What are you going to do that week? The two of you are there. This has got to be a very exciting week, other than the 2 minutes of the Derby around 6:30 on Saturday night.
Okay, well, you're talking to someone whose roots are the Times Square OTB in Manhattan, and I have never had the privilege or luck to actually attend a Kentucky Derby, but I have been to Travers Week and they call that the Summer Derby in Saratoga, and the whole town is festive. There'll be parties, there'll be social parties, the restaurants will be jammed, and like I say, everybody's going to be in a great mood. I mean, not all the time, but the whole build up and expectation of the most exciting 2 minutes of sports, which crescendos with hopefully a winning ticket, which makes you. I've said this before. There's no elation like there is for picking a winner and betting it and winning. Nothing compares to that in sports, as far as participating as an individual and enjoying it. You actually cash a ticket, which means you were in the right place at the right time. You figured it out, or you think you did, or you got lucky. It doesn't matter. All you have to do is look at the fans at the finish line and see the ones that are jumping up and down. And why are they jumping up and down? They're not getting paid unless they have the winner, and that's enough.
Comes the champ. I mean it. You are the champ. Believe me, you got more guts than you got sense. I love it. So what do you want?
I don't know.
It's a house rule. You have to give me a number.
I'll be right back.
I believe you will.
Excuse me, I'm taking a survey. Who do you like?
I like the 2-horse. It's got front wraps. I always bet a horse with front wraps.
Excuse me, I'm taking a survey.
I'm telling you, go for your lungs. The big money on the 4-horse. He's the only close. I mean, real money.
Who do you like?
I like the 6. That's the horse. That's it.
Uh-huh. Why?
I always bet on 5.
Who do you like?
Up yours. The number 1 horse.
Thank you.
I like the 4, number 4. 4.
These other nags are die. They're so tired, they'll get to the 8th hole. They look like they're standing still at a bus stop.
Unless they're like Richard Dreyfuss and he just calmly says, "I got it.
But you
I
also
got it."
you also got a pretty good race on Friday.
The Kentucky Oaks, that's the Philly Derby version of the Kentucky Derby. They have their Triple Crown too, the Philly Triple Crown, and it's always exciting. And there's been some great ones. I have not looked at the field for this year yet, but there's been some great fillies that have won that race and gone on. I think over time that the fillies, they're never quite as good as the males, but every now and then there's a standout. Winning Colors, Genuine Risk, Regret, that can. There was a horse named Relaxing years ago, who was trained by Angel Pena Jr., who was an Ogden Phipps horse, and that horse could run all day. She could run with the males or the females. So there are always exceptions, and there always will be exceptions. But for the most part, these 3-year-old males could burst out. There could be a superstar in there that hasn't had a chance to show anything yet. That's what's so exciting about this particular version. Usually coming into the Derby, there's 2 or 3 now horses. And if that was true here, it would be Sierra Leone and Fierceness, basically. But there's no guarantee based on Fierceness has showed some signs of greatness, but we don't know yet. It's too early. So it's going to be interesting. They both might get unseated by, Mystic Dan, or, I'm very curious about the horse Forever Young from Japan. Japan keeps taking shots at this race, and sooner or later they're going to get there. But Forever Young looks like the best shot they've had yet. He's undefeated and has gone a mile and 3/16, which is good. That's a 16th less than he'll go on Saturday, but he did that with ease. So he can go the distance. That's always a concern too. Can these horses make it a mile and a quarter? And there's a couple that have gone a mile and 3/16, so it stands to reason they can run the mile and a quarter. Catching Freedom is another one who has won at a mile and 3/16. So for me, I looked at this last night, and as a handicapper, all I learned was I'm going to have to like really dig down into this one because nothing stands out. I mean, there are horses that stand out if they get the racing luck they need, but you can't count on that. So you have to figure out there's a lot of speed horses. Is that going to hurt Fierceness on the front end, or will he dominate that speed? And if it hurts him, who's going to pick up the pieces? Is it Sierra Leone? Will he get a good enough trip from the 2-hole to sweep the field? Will Catching Freedom get there? Will Cox use his other 2 horses as rabbits to ensure a fast pace so Catching Freedom has something to run at? These are all things that have to be analyzed. And then on top of that, you have to take into condition the track bias, if there is one, and the track condition, if it changes from fast to sloppy. Can a horse run in the slop? And some of these have demonstrated they can run in either the slop or the fast track. And when I say a track bias, you can't know that until you watch the earlier races that day. Some tracks, there are times where the speed just holds up all day. And if that's going on, they would call that a speed bias at that track. And sometimes it's the closer. Sometimes the rail's dead. So all of those things bits of information aren't available until race day.
Okay.
So again, like the jockey, the handicapper has to be able to, jockey for position as the facts unroll.
You might want to wait. Like last year, we were picking Forte. We gave Mage the time of day, and we thought Mage was going to run in the money. And what happened at the last minute? Forte comes out. So let's say the same thing happens here. I'm going to propose to you. Fierceness doesn't make it to the race. They scratch Fierceness, just for hypothetical. Does that give Dornoch and Sierra Leone and Catching Freedom a better shot? I mean, Catching Freedom's 8-1.
It gives them all a better shot.
Yeah, of course.
Because
Dornoch is 20-1, but you say he's right on the first position.
And Dornoch was the favorite in I think it was the Bluegrass a week or so ago. And he looked like he should win that, but he didn't. He didn't run very well. So maybe something was wrong that day that's not wrong now. It's hard to just rule him out, especially as a full brother to Mage. For us to rule him out would be a little bit, the next podcast would be don't listen to us anymore. Just bet anybody related to Mage, because we keep picking these horses and throwing them out, or at least talking about these horses and then end up throwing them out. We didn't like Mage because he couldn't beat Forte.
Right.
Then Forte was out and we didn't go back to Mage. So
I'm putting my tuxedo shirt on and I'm putting my tie on. It's now. You've seen the horses. Let's talk about the exactas and the superfectas and all that. Let's get down to brass tacks here. Give me an example of an exacta or an exotic bet that you might play in the Kentucky Derby.
On first glance, there's 6 horses that I'm going to be looking hard at. Sierra Leone, Catching Freedom, Just a Touch, which is another Cox horse, Forever Young, the Japanese horse, Fierceness, which is Pletcher, and Stronghold, which is Phil D'Amato's horse, who's right outside. He's in the 18-hole. He's right outside Fierceness, and he has some speed, but he can also sit off the pace. Both those horses will have shown better ability to control their position in a race. They don't need the lead, but they can make the lead, and that's valuable. So, at this point, I'm very curious about Forever Young. I'm not leaving that horse out, the Japanese horse out, because he can track a pace, and he's undefeated in 5 races. And the Japanese horses they're not slouches. This horse has won in Dubai at distances and at sprints. So we don't know how good he can be. And that's always true in the Derby. There's always an unknown factor. And this is a really good one. So if I was going to work with 4 horses today, they'd be Sierra Leone, Catching Freedom, Forever Young, and Fierceness, with a strong look at Stronghold, who's on the outside of Fierceness. That would be 5 that I have to pick apart. The rest I've kind of eliminated. not in an arrogant way, but it's if they win, God bless them. But they're not going to have my money on them.
You were talking about Sierra Leone. I think the jockey is Tyler Gaffleone.
Definitely own. Yeah.
So it's a crapshoot. There's 20 horses.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a beautiful scene. This may be a great race to put $12 down on an exacta and just have a good time. 11 speed horses. Looks like the weather's going to be good. What a great time to be around horses.
I'll say. I'm going to probably play a few superfectas and hope for the best, because sometimes you can shoot the moon.
Is your buddy Shug got anything going on down there?
He's not in the Derby. I haven't looked at the rest of the field. And he's been having a pretty good year all over the country. I think he's training at a pretty high percentage this year. So I'm always rooting for Shug. Good man, ethical, integrity. Shug embodies what horse racing has been and should remain.
So what I learned from you is a lot of speed horses. Yep. You got 3 Cox speed horses. This might not be, let's crowd the thing and let the one come through. You don't have to be baffled by Baffert. He is not in town.
Nope.
Don't go out in a stretcher. You better take a $2 on Pletcher. Let's see.
Yeah.
What else did I learn here? I think you just got to, maybe it's a great time to pick a 20-1 too. Maybe win, place, show. A little $5 on a win, a place in a show on a 20-1.
Yeah, and historically in America, it's probably still true to some event. People who don't play, my brother never bet horses, my mother never bet horses, but they always had $2 on something in the Derby. So that's what I mean. It's a participation thing, and even from your home. I remember back in '78, I guess it was, my good friend Rob Mulderig knew I liked horses and asked me who I liked in the Derby, and I gave him, affirmed Alley Darn Believe It. So he played that triple. He was like, he thought I was a genius, but everybody had that triple. It didn't pay very much at all. He was like, I thought I hit, balloons, and the next thing I know, I got paid like $26 for a $1 bet. So sometimes they're more obvious than others, but it doesn't matter to the racing fan at that point. Of course, cashing a nice ticket is always good. But there's a lot of other races that day you can cash nice tickets. You just want to be a part of the Kentucky Derby, hopefully the winner. Hopefully it's a great race. Hopefully there's no asterisks or injuries or anything like that. And, to me, it's the standout event in all of sports. And hopefully it'll stay that way.
I'm going to put you on the spot. You get 4 horses out of these 20 that one of them's going to win and one of them's going to be the talk of the Triple Crown. Who would you bet? Let's say there was a bet. Let me start with 4 horses here. They're going to win. One of them's going to win this one, then the Preakness, and then the Belmont. Who are the 4 horses that you're going to pick that could win the Triple Crown, that could go on and advance to win the 2nd and the 3rd of the legs?
Although I don't think there'll be a Triple Crown winner this year, if I had to pick from this list, I'd say Sierra Leone. Because I think he can get the 1.5 miles. That's the key to the Triple Crown, is the Belmont Stakes. Mostly because a lot of these horses, if they don't perform well in the Derby, don't go to the Preakness. And even the winner sometimes skips the Preakness. He shouldn't, and it's rare, but it happens more often than it should. So I'd say Fierceness and Sierra Leone have the best shot at the Triple Crown. I'd say Catching Freedom, trained by Brad Cox, has his chance to upset one of those 2 in any one of the 3 races if he goes for all 3. And again, Forever Young, I'm not leaving him out till I see. I want to see what he does on Saturday. Maybe he's the next Archangelo. We don't know.
I love it. Parting thoughts.
My old Kentucky home, when you hear that, you're within minutes of the most exciting 2 minutes of sports.
Riders up. Great.
See you at I'll see you at the cashing window.
Why are you laughing?
Well, at least we have the laugh to add at the end. That's what happened. Somebody changed my grip, and the next thing you know, I can't do the podcast anymore. I felt like I was in the first row of the first pew at church right during the sermon.
And your brother was poking you.
My brother was making me laugh.